morning to each one. As you can see, I'm not Daryl. I was holding out hope that when I saw him this morning that maybe he'd want to after all, but no, speaking isn't something I enjoy as much as some people do, but it's probably because I think about myself too much. This morning I'd like to talk about something that I don't feel like I know very much about, but it's maybe more like a New Year's resolution that I want to do better at with God's help. And that is, if I'd give it a title this morning, I'd call it Faith and Faithfulness. There's a story about Thomas Edison, the American inventor, that I'd like to read. And this story maybe is more about perseverance, but it can also be about faith. He had faith in that he could come up with something, invent something that was never invented before. Thomas Edison, a man of relentless determination, worked diligently in his dimly lit room. His dream was to invent something that would illuminate the world in ways candles and gas lights never could. Edison believed in the power of perseverance, even when the odds were stacked against him. Edison held up a lit candle, studying the flickering flame. His eyes shone with the same fiery determination. He knew there was a better way to bring light into people's lives, and he was resolved to find it. His workshop was a testament to his relentless pursuit, cluttered with contraptions and experiments that didn't work. Yet Edison saw these failures not as a sign to stop, but as stepping stones toward success. He often found himself holding burnt-out contraptions with bewilderment etched on his face. Yet his spirit was unbroken in each failure. He found a lesson, saying, "I have not failed, I have just found 999 ways that won't work." The journey was filled with humorous moments. There were times when Edison's inventions ended up in unexpected explosions or gave off strange smells. These incidents added a touch of lightheartedness to his otherwise strenuous journey. Edison's perseverance was not just about his inventions. It was about his belief in a brighter future, a world lit not by flickering candles, but by a steady, reliable source of light. This belief fueled his relentless pursuit. Edison's determination was infectious. He inspired those around him, proving that failure was not the end, but rather an opportunity to learn and grow. His relentless pursuit of success was a beacon of hope for many. His journey was filled with countless sleepless nights spent scribbling in his notebook and working on his contraptions. Yet Edison never complained. He saw each failure as a stepping stone toward his goal and not as a setback. Finally, after countless trials and errors, Edison's persistence paid off. He had finally invented the light bulb, a device that would revolutionize the world and illuminate the lives of millions. I would like to look at other examples this morning of faith in the Bible. First, I would like to turn to Job. I'm going to read Job 1 and 2. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And there was one born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels, and 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 she-asses, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the east. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. And it was so when the days of their feasting were gone about that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. The Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? That hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land? But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power. Only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And there came a messenger unto Job and said, The oxen were plowing, and the asses feeding beside them. And the Sabeans fell upon them and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The fire of God is fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, The Chaldeans made out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Then Job arose and rent his mantle, and shaved his head, and fell down upon the ground, and worshipped, and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Again there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath will he give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd, and scraped himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What, shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. And when Job's 3 friends heard of all this evil that was come upon him, they came every one from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite, for they had made an appointment together to come to mourn with him and to comfort him. And when they lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept. And they rent every one of his mantle and sprinkled dust upon their heads towards heaven. So they sat down with him upon the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And none spake a word unto him, for they saw that his grief was very great. So in verse 9, Satan says, doth Job fear God for naught? So he's basically saying, Job just serves you because you bless and protect him. But in all this, it says that Job didn't charge God foolishly. And then we have his friends come, and I think they meant well, but they might have been better if they would have not talked so much, for sure. And what says they sat with him for 7 days and nights without talking. So they weren't real quick about starting to talk, but anyway, they ended up, throughout Job, they accused him over and over of, that he sinned against God, or seems like the only conclusions that they could come up with on why Job was suffering was because either Job was guilty of some sin worthy of punishment, or that God was unjust. They didn't recognize that God was testing Job. In 22, 1 through 10, just a brief sampling of their words. Then Eliphaz the Temanite answered and said, can a man be profitable unto God? As he that is wise may be profitable unto himself? Is it any pleasure to the Almighty that thou art righteous? Or is it gain to him that thou makest thy ways perfect? Will he reprove thee for fear of thee? Will he enter with thee into judgment? Is not thy wickedness great, and thine iniquities infinite? For thou hast taken a pledge from thy brother for naught, and stripped the naked of their clothing. Thou hast not given water to the weary to drink, and thou hast withholden bread from the hungry. But as for the mighty man, he had the earth, and the honorable man dwelt in it. Thou hast sent widows away empty, and the arms of the fatherless have been broken. Therefore snares are round about thee, and sudden fear troubleth thee. So they blamed him for, they thought that he had sinned, and that's why this had come on him. But we know that Job wrestled with questions. I'd like to read just a brief just a little bit in this one book here. In Job 14, Job addresses the helplessness and hopelessness of a man before God. First, a man is helpless to control his affairs. Man born of woman is few of days and full of trouble. He springs up like a flower and withers away. Like a fleeting shadow, he does not endure. Human beings, says Job, are victims of their circumstances. Their lives are amazingly brief and filled with problems and pain. Despite the helplessness and limitations of the human condition, God seems to judge human beings for failings that are beyond human control. That is Job's opening argument. He goes on to say, "Do you fix your eye on such a one? Will you bring him before you for judgment? Who can bring what is pure from the impure? No one. Man's days are determined. You have decreed the number of his months and have set limits he cannot exceed." Again, Job expresses his perception that human beings are victims of forces they cannot control. He says, in effect, I was born into this fallen world with these fallen traits. I can't help sinning because I come from sinful parents and live in a sinful world. You can't expect a pure man to rise from impure circumstances and an impure heritage. You can't expect me to be perfect when I was born into an imperfect world. Just as there are limits to the span of my life, there are limits to the kind of life I can live. This is the expression of Job's heart, and you can probably identify with his feelings. We can't help it that we were born into a fallen world, so what can we do? Doesn't God expect too much of us? That is the basis of Job's plea. He continues, "At least there is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again, and its new shoots will not fail. Its roots may grow old in the ground, and its stump die in the soil. Yet at the scent of water it will bud and put forth shoots like a plant. But man dies and is laid low. He breathes his last and is no more. As water disappears from the sea, or a riverbed becomes parched and dry, so man lies down and does not rise. Till the heavens are no more, men will not awake or be roused from their sleep." Here again, Job expresses humanity's sense of hopelessness and regret. A tree can sprout again after being cut down, but human beings can't live their lives over again. We learn from our mistakes, but we can't go back and undo them. At one time or another, we have all wished we could live our lives over again and avoid the mistakes we made the first time. We wish God would give us a second chance at life, but we live only once. Then life disappears as water evaporates from a dry riverbed. In his pain, Job has come to a pessimistic view of life. Though there is much truth in what he says, it's a one-sided and distorted view. Because of his pain, he's unable to see the goodness of life and the blessings of God's grace. We should not fall into the trap of Job's pessimism, nor should we judge Job for feeling this way. This is the kind of thinking that pain and loss produce in human lives. Job goes on, "If only you would hide me in the grave and conceal me till your anger has passed. If only you would set me a time and then remember me." So Job wrestled with these questions, but then in Job 19, 25 through 29, he says, "For I know that my Redeemer liveth, and that he shall stand at the latter day upon the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God, whom I shall see for myself, and mine eyes shall behold, and not another. Though my reins be consumed within me. But ye should say, Why persecutest we him, seeing the root of the matter is found in me? Be ye afraid of the sword, for wrath bringeth the punishments of the sword, that ye may know there is a judgment." In verse 25 there, the word Redeemer, I find it interesting that he uses that word as it was long before Christ. But it has the idea of kinsman redeemer. Job was looking for one who would redress his wrongs and heal his injuries. Then in Job 42, the last chapter, we see how God restored so much of what Job had lost. In fact, it says he blessed him more than in the beginning. I would also like to look at the life of Abraham in regards to faith. Hebrews 11 is one passage I would like to look at some. Hebrews 11, (8 through 12). By faith Abraham, when he was called to go out into a place which he should after receive for an inheritance, obeyed, and he went out not knowing whither he went. By faith he sojourned in the land of promise, as in a strange country, dwelling in tabernacles with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he looked for a city which hath foundations, whose builder and maker is God. Through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Therefore sprang there even of one, and him as good as dead, so many as the stars in the sky in multitude, and as the sand which is by the seashore innumerable. And 17 through 19. By faith Abraham, when he was tried, offered up Isaac, and he that had received the promises offered up his only begotten son, of whom it was said that in Isaac shall thy seed be called, accounting that God was able to raise him up even from the dead, from whence also he received him in a figure. There were several what you call impossibilities in Abraham's life. For one thing, God promised that his seed would be as the sand of the seashore. And another one, of course, was that God made Sarah was barren, and so that it was impossible for them to have children without God intervening. Genesis 17, 15 through 20 says, And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall her name be. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. And Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, O that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard thee. Behold, I have blessed him, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. And also when he was tested with his son Isaac, verse 12 of chapter 22 says, And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. I don't know if you ever wondered about the phrase, now I know. You could ask, isn't God completely all-knowing? And didn't he know that Abraham actually feared him? But I think it was more the idea of God wanted to experience Abraham's fear of him. Wow, I didn't realize it was getting this late already. I have a hard time knowing how much to study for sometimes. We know how the Israelites were unfaithful, despite all that God did for them. I guess to wrap up, I'd just like to think a little bit about how can I get more faith? How can I become more secure in the love of God and not be so double-minded like I often am, and anxious and comparing myself with others and scared of what people think and all kinds of other thoughts? First of all, we need to have the work of Christ in our lives. Also, I mentioned double-mindedness. I would like to think just a little bit about that. In the book of James, I think double-mindedness is the idea of uncertainty, or maybe hypocrisy, or maybe being one way with depending what circumstances or people I'm with, or Um, I guess I'll take the time just to read some of this here. James chapter 1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, of the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. My brother, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not. It shall be given him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted, but the rich in that he is made low. And then I'll jump to verse 12. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. Let no man say that when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren. Every good gift from every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. With whom is no variableness. I like that verse after verse 8, when it talks about being double-minded, and then it talks about God having no variableness or shadow of turning. When we look to him, we don't need to be, we can be stable and not be double-minded. I think I would like to go back to Hebrews here. In 39 and 40 of chapter 11, it says, And these all, having obtained a good report through faith, received not the promise, God having provided some better thing for us, that they without us should not be made perfect. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradictions of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. I'm not quite sure how to explain verse 40, but the beginning of chapter 12, we have all these witnesses, and we need to look to Christ. In verse 3 it says that if we're wearied and faint, just think of the way Christ endured the contradictions of sinners. So I don't have much more. I would just like to end with a quote from I don't know if you're all familiar with the movie Chariots of Fire, but there's a there's something that Eric Liddell says in there that I would like to close with. Jesus said, "Behold, the kingdom of God is within you. If with all your hearts you truly seek me, you shall ever surely find me. If you commit yourself to the love of Christ, then that is how you run a straight race."